Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Regional Early Learning Resource Center. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Posa from the Early Learning Resource Center is the host of the program and is with us throughout the series. Well, good morning, John, and who do we have on the program today?
Well, good morning, Joe. This morning I'm pleased to welcome Ryan Riley, who is the new Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Early Learning Investment Commission. And Ryan has started in this position since February. For those of our listeners who are not aware, the commission was created by an executive order under Governor Wolf in 2008 for the purpose of mobilizing business leaders across Pennsylvania to secure support for investments in early learning. So welcome to the program, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And, you know, just a little bit about your background and, coming to the commission. Could you tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about your role with the Early Learning Investment Commission?
Sure. I joined the commission, as you stated, in February. Previous to that, I've had a career that's really spanned education, beginning at 6 weeks and going through higher education. A lot of my role and responsibility has been, over the years, taking organizations and growing them and building them, establishing program development, raising funds, really raising their profile and enhancing their roles and expanding their responsibilities in communities around the Commonwealth and in Washington, D.C. What's attracted me to the commission has really been this sense of where policy and business come together to address a community challenge. And I've operated on all three sides of that, if you will, coin or triangle. And this is where they're all married together. As you mentioned, the commission is really a network of business champions who not only understand the connection between quality early childhood experiences and a strong Pennsylvania economy, but they understand how it impacts the public and private sector investments. And I think one of the things that we look for businesses and companies to relocate to the Commonwealth or to expand their work, they need a workforce to do that. And this workforce, as our report, which we just issued this month, states, is in peril. We do not have enough child care. In fact, the insufficiency of child care is costing Pennsylvania about $2.5 billion a year.
Yeah, that's report which was released. I was aware of the report and was just released publicly yesterday, and that is a concern because not going into every single specifics of the report, but the problems come in when you have families with children who need child care or preschool, and they can't find adequate child care in order to allow the parents to go to work. And so if there is child care, it may be inadequate. So the parent goes to work and they're either having to take time off from work or they're not really focused and concerned about the child at work. And this is costing, of course, productivity. And it is more of an issue than a lot of people really realize. Part of it is because there are pockets where we do not have those facilities. In areas where we do need them, and in other ways, it's because the quality of that child care is not sufficient. So, if you can comment a little bit about that report, what does it detail? Does it detail some of the things that we need to do from a business standpoint that could help correct that?
Well, it does, and I think one of the things that the report, which is available on our website, PAEarlylearning.com. And one of the aspects is it frames the issue extraordinarily well. We partnered with a professor, Dr. Clive Belfield from Columbia University, who has experience in economic factors. And in fact, the the college that he teaches at is called the Center for Benefit Cost Studies in Education. And so this is an area where he is one of the nation's foremost leading experts. And what he was able to do is frame our report in three areas. First, and they're all interrelated,
right.
Access, affordability, and quality. And you're exactly right, John. The first piece around access, in Pennsylvania, 57% of all residents live in a child care desert. And a child care desert, simply put, is an area where there's more than 3 times as many children as there are licensed child care slots. So that affects everybody, low income, middle income, high income. We, in fact, have a majority of Pennsylvanians who live in these child care deserts. Typically, availability is especially limited, though, for families who have infants and toddlers working non-traditional hours, evenings, weekends, or living in rural communities. So what the report does is it gives policymakers factual-based information to, as they prepare the budget, focus on where investments need to be made in order to stem this divide. The second area around that is affordability. It costs roughly, I think, $14,500 is the estimated number to send a child to one of the state system universities.
Right.
It costs almost $12,000 to send a child there. And so while we've known this anecdotally, we've not tied it together necessarily in the past in one report. And I think that's where we have a few opportunities as we go into this late budget, beginning of the budget session, sort of later in our fiscal year, as they prepare for the fiscal code and they prepare to look at these investments, that the governor has asked for additional spending in this area. And we need that spending to be approved in order to help stem, again, the divide between that access and the affordability. And the third piece is quality. Only about 40% of all child care in Pennsylvania currently meets high-quality standards. And that's, again, more challenging and disproportionately so for our rural communities. And so that's an area where we believe if we can control and support, and the ELRCs are a great example of where we help to grow this, we think that we're going to be in a much better position to serve our youngest and most vulnerable population if we can enhance and improve the quality around the Commonwealth.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that you brought up there, which is quite extensive, the lack of child care that is provided over non-traditional hours. Now, when I say non-traditional, those would be for the parents that, for instance, work a second shift, say like they work from 4 to 11, or sometimes they may work even later than that, because we have so many businesses now that are 24-hour businesses, whether they be, in a restaurant that is operating 24 hours, even in licensed casinos that are 24 hours, hotels and such. But yet it's a dual problem, because it's a problem for having staff, adequate staff that can work those hours for the child care operations, and then having the capacity to handle those children. So it's both a business challenge as well as a workforce challenge as well.
Can I ask a question, just a clarification? I did my prep, as I always do for the program, John, and I was wondering, does your commission deal just with the state government in terms of increasing funding, or do you deal with business leaders? I know you have 58 business people on your commission, to increase contribution and participation from the business community in the state.
Yeah, I mean, the commission is certainly focused on that. We've had a few visits. We're going to be doing actually one tonight in State College with one of our commissioners around a panel for engaging the business community. It's being hosted by the United Way. We've been doing a number of these around the Commonwealth. What I will say is, and what's been a value in bringing these business leaders, are they're very committed to this issue. This is not a a community service or a board responsibility. The commissioners that we have deeply understand this issue and have wrapped their hands around it, not only personally, but also their corporations. They have invested in this space, and I think the impact for me in seeing this has been how they're communicating to business leaders. We had an event recently with one of our commissioners, Gene Barr, in the Berwick area. And Gene was able Gene's full-time job is president of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. And he framed this argument, very well to be made is investments in child care are not Democratic or Republican issues. They're societal issues. And if we don't have strong early child care, we're not going to have a strong economy. We're not going to have a strong workforce. And what he was able to convey is when you define success in Pennsylvania in a strong economy and reduced crime and successful students and thriving communities, all of that comes from early education investments. And so as a business leader, he encouraged at that event, and a lot of our commissioners do, by giving of their voice to support this work, not only here in the Commonwealth, but also in their local communities. When they decide to make investments, when libraries pursue grants to put in child care programs, to be advocates for all of that.
A follow-up on that, you're dealing with business people, and these are people who measure success by the bottom line. How do you make the case for early childhood learning and child care, showing results, showing metrics that they can relate to in terms of results in later school performance or into adulthood?
Well, I think one of the two of the examples I'll give you, sort of one that just is top of mind around this report, is the bottom line. Numbers speak volumes, and for businesses to realize that they're basically contributing in large part to this big economic loss because of the insufficiency of child care. What they've looked at are businesses alone are losing about $600 million a year in revenue. That's not to mention the $1.5 billion that's being lost. So of the $2.5 billion of economics, only $400 million is tax and sales revenue. Majority of this is going to people who live and work and run businesses in our communities. So I think for newcomers to this work or business leaders who may be listening, that's undebatable. Numbers are pretty clear to understand, although they're very large. We've been able to boil it down to show that when we look at the average family in Pennsylvania, they're not bringing home roughly $3,500 a year in economic money. Now, the second piece, which I'll share with you in the larger point of business leaders, one of our commissioners from Weiss Markets, the retired CEO, Norm Rich, makes it very clear every time he talks about this work, and I've had the fortune to be with Norm a few times, and what he says is the skills that every future career and job will need, teamwork, empathy, resiliency, are shaped by the quality of educational experiences in early life. And that is no more true than in Pennsylvania over the last 50 years have we seen our education system decline from, an agrarian economy where one parent worked, earned a good wage, and the other parent was able to stay home and instill grit and resilience and accountability in a child before they shipped them off to that primary school. Well, now when we look at the transition of our economy again, we have over 60% of working moms in Pennsylvania. We surpass the national average. We're one of the top 10 states in the country with working moms. And so I think, in large part, child care is becoming an area where investment has to be made to ensure that we have that workforce. It truly is a two-generational approach.
Absolutely. And as I'm reviewing the report, one of the last sections of that report, centers on how businesses can take steps to promote access to affordable, high-quality childcare and some of the opportunities private sector businesses have. And the three things listed are to better understand what your employees' needs are through collecting survey information to determine childcare impacts on scheduling, transportation, and access. That's one. And the second one is to create dependent care assistance programs and a potential match for a subsidy program. And third, to create a culture of social responsibility that places philanthropic investments in high-quality centers according to the Pennsylvania Keystone Star quality rating system. So those are three very specific private sector opportunities that businesses can do to help, take those steps to promote access so that quality childcare can be available to all parents, particularly for employees, kids that the kids that are from the employees that work in businesses. The report also mentions some things that policymakers can take to promote access to affordable quality child care. And you may want to comment on some of those, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and thank you for referencing that, we certainly have two big takeaways on the last page of the report for policymakers who we've hand-delivered this report to, and we will be doing more of those deliveries when they're back in town next week. But two of the things that I just want to focus on that you mentioned around what private sector opportunities can be, we have great examples not only of commissioners in our community, but we have employers who are beginning to address this challenge themselves by building child care facilities on or near their corporate campuses, subsidizing the cost of child care for employees, using savings programs where employees are able to deduct a small amount out of their pay, and then that gets collected tax-free and is able to be paid to their daycare. So we've seen a lot of innovation. But the one area where I think we want to make sure people understand where there's an opportunity, no matter, you don't have to be a commissioner to do this, is in your local community by making investments in high-quality centers to improve the star rating system. That is the indicator of quality across the board that's measured. And those star and 3 and 4 centers that we have in the Commonwealth are producing phenomenal ROI. And if you're a business leader and you're uncertain about, where to access this, that is the place where you can make the biggest impact by investing and supporting and providing resources to ensure that these centers can become high quality. We have a lot of star 1 and 2 centers that if they had some support and investment, they could improve and enhance their star rating and become a much better quality program.
Now, there are 58 major business leaders on your commission. My question is, what's being done to reach out to smaller but locally maybe more influential business leaders in smaller communities here like Du Bois? These would be people who own maybe local car dealerships, building contractors, large furniture stores, people in the community who would support local causes to get them on board supporting child care and early childhood learning right in their own community. Anything in that area or anything considered in that area? Absolutely.
That is a large part of what our commissioners' responsibilities, and they take very seriously across the Commonwealth, are to go to some of those communities. Yesterday, we were in Greene County talking to a group of business leaders. Tonight we'll be in Center County. Next week we'll be throughout Bucks and Montgomery County. But I do agree with you that when business leaders hear this information in their setting, and so the way that can happen quickly is if there's a community where we may not be scheduled to go into with an overview of these reports, on our website we have a great speakers bureau. So if you have a Rotary, a Kiwanis, a Lions Club, a chamber event, If you have some activity where you feel there's a group of business leaders, and that is sort of the general channel to get this information. We have other parts of the Commonwealth where we have business leaders, 5 or 6, that create, and now some of these smaller regional groups are up to 20 or 30 members. And so they're hearing a little about this, and then they're building their own support system to focus in their own communities or regions.
Yes, and if you wanted to access the website for the Early Learning Investment Commission, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but I believe it's www.paearlylearning.com, and you'll not only be able to identify all of the 58 commissioners, the businesses they're affiliated with and where they're located, but all kinds of opportunities in terms of resources, and also on ways that you can, if you wanted to access or have a speaker come to your community, that's a part of the commission, how you could do that. One of the other things that is so critical is the aspect, as you mentioned, about how investment can be made to help improve those, for instance, Star 1 and 2 facilities that are trying to improve in their quality to become Stars 3 and 4, and say a community wherever a parent is living does not have a Star 3 or 4 facility. That's a perfect opportunity to partner, where businesses can partner and provide resources in any way to help support and advocate in that area, just as you had mentioned, Ryan. Because as we all know, it takes a public-private partnership, and so much of the funding aspect that comes through OCDEL, the Office of Child Development and Early Learning, and as well as other federal funding, is all public money. But sometimes that's just not enough to really deal with the challenges that we have. So that the public involvement, the private involvement with public government is so critical, is it not?
You're exactly right. And I think as we look at supporting those Star 1 and 2 facilities to enhance their programming, one of the opportunities that comes to mind, and this is something that took place at our summit in our videos, if they're not all up there, they'll be up there by the end of the week, but we've been fortunate enough that all of our presenters at our summit agreed, and these are national experts in their areas, to have their presentations on our website. So again, folks can go there and get a sense of what occurred at this summit with over 250 business leaders. And one of the pillars of the program, and John, you may remember since you were there,
yeah.
Mary Alice McCarthy.
Absolutely.
And she has a remarkable presentation around apprenticeships, creating higher ed opportunities for these teachers to go back and get certifications. So that way, because a STAR facility isn't just about the facilities, and it's just not about the number of students and ratios. It's about the quality of the teachers. And so that oftentimes is another barrier to those programs. And there's a lot of great examples in Pennsylvania, Wilkes University, Misericordia, Keystone. They're all doing wonderful things in this space, to name a few. I was up in the Northeast looking at them. But there's a lot of programs that are doing this work around the Commonwealth. And I look forward to being with more of those institutions to ensure that we can lower the barriers for these teachers to get the qualification that they need and the higher education opportunities to enhance their program.
Absolutely. Hey, our time is up, Ryan. Thank you so much. Wonderful information on the Pennsylvania Early Learning Investment Commission. So much more we can talk about. We'll have to have you back again. But I appreciate you being on the program today.
Thank you.
And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at the same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Posa and the Early Learning Resource Center, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.